I didn't expect him to follow me, but I heard his footsteps behind me the moment I reached the hallway. "Ava, wait," Daniel called out. I stopped, but I didn't turn around. For a few seconds, only silence filled the space between us again. Then he spoke softer this time. "I never wanted it to go this far." That line, it sounded rehearsed, but broken at the same time. I finally turned slightly, just enough to see him. "Things don't go this far by accident," I said. "They're taken there, step by step." He lowered his gaze. And in that moment, I realized something important. He wasn't trying to convince me anymore. He was trying to convince himself. But I wasn't there for his guilt. I was there for my exit. I walked past him without waiting for another word. And for the first time, he didn't try to stop me. My name is Ava Reynolds, and I never thought my life would turn into a story like this. It started with small signs I ignored, things that didn't feel important at first. My boyfriend, Daniel, began acting different. He was always on his phone, smiling at messages he wouldn't explain, and suddenly busy all the time. I remember that evening clearly. I walked into the cafe we usually met at, and I saw her. Mia. She was sitting too close to him, laughing like she belonged there. But what shocked me wasn't just her presence, it was his reaction. Daniel didn't move away. He didn't even look surprised to see me. Instead, he just said, "You're early." Like nothing was wrong. Mia smiled at me. Not awkwardly, but confidently. As if she already knew something I didn't. That moment should have broken me. I felt it in my chest, that tight pressure of betrayal forming. But instead of reacting, I stayed completely calm. I sat down slowly, looked at both of them, and said nothing. Because something inside me told me, this wasn't the full truth yet. And I was right. To be continued, I didn't say anything at that table, but my mind was already working faster than my emotions. Daniel kept talking to Mia like I wasn't even there, and she acted like she had every right to be in my place. That was the first time I noticed something strange. They weren't hiding it. They were comfortable. On the way home, Daniel tried to act normal. He asked me about my day, like nothing had happened in that cafe. But his voice felt rehearsed, empty. I remember staring at him while he drove, thinking, how long has this been going on? That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying every moment, every message, every late reply. And then I did something I had never done before. I checked his phone while he was in the shower. What I found wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was proof. Messages. Late-night calls. And one message from Mia that said, "She still doesn't know, right?" I felt The next morning, I acted completely normal. That was the first rule I set for myself. If they were playing a game, I would not let them see my hand. Daniel kissed my forehead before leaving for work, like nothing had changed. But now, every touch felt different, calculated, fake. At work, I couldn't focus. My thoughts kept going back to that message, "She still doesn't know, right?" That sentence replayed in my head over and over. It wasn't just betrayal anymore, it was planning. They were planning something behind me. During lunch, I made a decision. I didn't want assumptions anymore. I needed clarity. So I called Mia. She answered on the second ring, like she was expecting me. "Hi Ava," she said, too calmly. That tone told me everything I needed to know. Normal people don't sound prepared for a call like that. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse her. I simply said, "We need to talk. In person." A short pause followed. Then she said something that made my stomach drop. Of course. I was waiting for this. And in that moment, I realized, this was no longer about suspicion. This was something much bigger. We met that evening at a quiet restaurant, far from places Daniel or I usually went. I arrived first. I wanted to see her reaction when she saw me sitting there, calm, waiting. Mia walked in exactly on time. No hesitation. No fear. She looked at me like she wasn't stepping into danger, but into control. She sat down and smiled. I guess you figured it out, she said. No denial. No confusion. Just confirmation. That was the moment my calm started to feel heavier than anger. Because calm is dangerous when it replaces emotion completely. I leaned forward slightly and asked, "How long?" She didn't even pretend. 6 months, she replied. 6 months. While I was planning my future with Daniel, she was already living part of it. But then she added something I didn't expect. "It's not what you think, Ava. You're not the only one being played." Her what? I didn't respond right away. I just looked at Mia, trying to understand what she meant by "not the only one being played." But her expression didn't change. She wasn't nervous, she was careful. She reached into her bag and placed her phone on the table. "I didn't want to be part of this," she said quietly, "but Daniel didn't tell you everything." My heart tightened, but my face stayed calm. She unlocked her phone and slid it toward me. "There's something you should see." I hesitated for only a second, then I looked. It wasn't just messages between her and Daniel. There were emails. Plans. Even notes about me. My name wasn't just mentioned, it was discussed like a problem they were trying to solve. One line stood out the most. "She trusts too easily. That's why it will work." My stomach dropped, but I still didn't speak. Because now I understood something important. This wasn't a love triangle. It was a setup. I closed the phone and leaned back in my chair, but my mind was no longer the same. Everything I believed about Daniel started breaking piece by piece. Mia watched me carefully, like she was waiting to see if I would react the way they expected. But I didn't. Instead, I asked her one simple question. "Why are you telling me this now?" She looked down for a moment before answering. "Because I realized something," she said. "Once he's done with you, he doesn't stop. He just replaces." Those words stayed in the air longer than they should have. Replace. Not leave. Not end. Replace. That wasn't love. That was strategy. I stood up slowly, placed some money on the table, and looked at her one last time. "If everything you showed me is true," I said calmly, "then Daniel made his first mistake already." Mia frowned. "What mistake?" I gave a small, controlled smile. "He underestimated me." And for the first time that night, I felt something shift inside me. Not pain. Preparation. And I was the target. That night, I didn't go home immediately. I sat in my car outside the apartment, watching the windows where Daniel was supposed to be. The lights were on. He was inside, living a normal evening, while everything in my world had already changed. For a moment, I thought about walking in and confronting him. Asking him everything at once. But something inside me stopped me. Because I finally understood what Mia meant. If I reacted emotionally, I would lose control of the truth. So I stayed still. I opened my phone again and started going through everything Mia showed me. Every message, every note, every plan. The more I read, the more it became clear, they weren't just hiding an affair. They were building a version of reality where I would disappear quietly. My throat tightened, but my hands stayed steady. And then I made my decision. I wasn't going to confront Daniel tonight. I was going to watch him. Because now I wanted to know how far they were willing to go. When they thought I still didn't know that, I waited outside for almost an hour before Daniel finally stepped out of the apartment. He was calm, scrolling on his phone, smiling at something on the screen. That same smile I used to think belonged only to me, now felt. He didn't notice my car parked across the street. He got into his car and drove off. And I followed him. Not fast. Not obvious. Just enough distance to stay invisible. We drove for nearly 20 minutes until he stopped at a small building I didn't recognize. No fancy restaurant. No usual place. Just a quiet apartment complex at the edge of the city. My heart tightened again. Because this wasn't part of his normal routine. I parked a few blocks away and watched him walk inside without hesitation. He didn't even look back. And that was the moment I realized something painful but clear. This wasn't something new happening tonight. This was something he had done before, many times. I stayed in the car, staring at that building. I stayed in the car with my hands gripping the steering wheel, watching that building like it had answers hidden inside its walls. Every minute felt heavier than the last. I kept telling myself to stay calm, to not rush in, to not make a mistake. But calm doesn't mean blind. After about 20 minutes, I saw movement again. Daniel came out first. But he wasn't alone. Mia was with him. They didn't hold hands. They didn't do anything obvious. But the way they walked together, it didn't feel new. It felt practiced. Familiar. My chest tightened, but I didn't move. I watched them talk for a few seconds outside the building. She said something, and he nodded like he already understood. Then she left in a different direction. And Daniel stayed there for a moment, looking down at his phone before finally leaving. That was the moment everything inside me went quiet. No anger. No shock. Just clarity. Because now I knew the truth wasn't hidden in messages anymore. It was happening right in front of me. And I had been watching it all along. That I drove home slowly that night, but my mind wasn't in the car anymore. It was still at that building, replaying every second I had just seen. Daniel and Mia. Calm. Natural. Like I was the only disruption in something already decided. When I got home, the apartment felt different. Not physically, but emotionally. Like I was entering a place where I no longer fully belonged. Daniel wasn't there yet. I walked straight to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and sat down in silence. For the first time, I didn't feel like crying. I felt like I was analyzing. Every detail Mia had shown me, every message, every meeting, started forming a pattern in my head. This wasn't confusion anymore. It was coordination. And then my phone lit up. A message from Daniel. Where are you? We need to talk. I stared at it for a long moment. Because now I finally understood something important. He didn't want to explain. He want. I drove home slowly that night, but my mind wasn't in the car anymore. It was still at that building, replaying every second I had just seen. Daniel and Mia. Calm. Natural. Like I was the only disruption in something already decided. When I got home, the apartment felt different. Not physically, but emotionally. Like I was entering a place where I no longer fully belonged. Daniel wasn't there yet. I walked straight to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and sat down in silence. For the first time, I didn't feel like crying. I felt like I was analyzing. Every detail Mia had shown me, every message, every meeting, started forming a pattern in my head. This wasn't confusion anymore. It was coordination. And then my phone lit up. A message from Daniel. Where are you? We need to talk. I stared at it for a long moment. Because now I finally understood something important. He didn't want to explain. He wanted to control the timing. But I was no longer reacting to his timing. I didn't reply to Daniel's message right away. I just sat there, staring at the screen as it kept lighting up again and again. We need to talk. Please answer. It's not what you think. Same pattern. Same urgency. Same control. But something had changed in me. I wasn't rushing anymore. I opened Mia's messages again and started cross-checking everything with Daniel's texts. Times, locations, excuses. Slowly, the gaps became impossible to ignore. They weren't random lies. They were coordinated timing. Every work meeting Daniel had matched Mia's silence. Every business trip matched her absence. It was too clean. Too planned. I leaned back and exhaled slowly. For the first time, I saw it clearly. I wasn't dealing with chaos. I was dealing with a system. And systems can be studied. And broken. My phone buzzed again. Daniel was coming home. And this time, I wasn't unprepared. I was building my own. I heard the door unlock before I saw him. Daniel walked. Daniel finally sat down, rubbing his forehead like he was trying to reset the situation. "This is getting out of hand," he said. But I didn't move. I stayed standing, watching him carefully now. Not as someone in love, but as someone collecting evidence. "You want to know what's out of hand?" I asked quietly. "Being lied to while you act like I'm imagining things." He looked up at me sharply. "That's not what's happening," he said quickly. Too quickly again. I walked a few steps closer. "Then explain the apartment," I said. His jaw tightened. For the first time, I saw something different in him. Not confidence. Pressure. Because he realized I wasn't guessing anymore. I wasn't reacting. I was connecting. And when someone starts connecting the truth, excuses stop working. He stood up slowly, but this time, he didn't look calm anymore. He looked trapped. I didn't expect him to follow me, but I heard his footsteps behind me the moment I reached the hallway. "Ava, wait," Daniel called out. I stopped, but I didn't turn around. For a few seconds, only silence filled the space between us again. Then he spoke softer this time. "I never wanted it to go this far." That line, it sounded rehearsed, but broken at the same time. I finally turned slightly, just enough to see him. "Things don't go this far by accident," I said. "They're taken there, step by step." He lowered his gaze. And in that moment, I realized something important. He wasn't trying to convince me anymore. He was trying to convince himself. But I wasn't there for his guilt. I was there for my exit. I walked past him without waiting for another word. And for the first time, he didn't try to stop me.